Should we start and then come in? Or yes? So.
Oh my Jesus.
Ah.
This book. This English book.
Oh. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. So today inshallah ta'ala and over the next week that will be changing from our normal schedule and lesson that we'll normally have. So today inshallah ta'ala and also tomorrow and next week that we'll try to take this time to discuss or to read one of the books in Usul al-Fiqh. So we'll be trying to take this time to read one of the books in Usul al-Fiqh, and the book that have been chosen, of those books that have been chosen, is the work of Ibn Al-Uthaymin rahimahullah ta'ala, that that the author rahimahullah, that what is titled there? What the title there?
Foundations of the knowledge of Al-Usul.
Aywa, so that's the book of Ibn Al-Uthaymin rahimahullah. So as we know concerning that, regarding concerning this ilm, regarding concerning ilm al-shar'iyya, that it have different signs, and of those signs that we have the science of Quran that relates to Quran, and also that of hadith, and also its related topics, and also the science of fiqh, and also its related topics. So of those things that are related to fiqh is usul al-fiqh. So it's one of the science that's attached to ilm al-fiqh. So a person who wishes to study fiqh and to be proficient in the particular topic, in the particular science, which is al-fiqh, then they have to go through a certain study plan, and of that study plan we include studying books of usul al-fiqh, qawaid al-fiqh, books in ashbab al-nadhahir. So different things has to be studied. So if the person can properly master that science and apply fiqh in a way which is appropriate based upon you have gone through these science. So of those areas regarding the person wish to discuss or to pass hukum, then they have to study usul al-fiqh. Just as the person needs to study al-fiqh, and also the person may need to study qawaid al-fiqh and the related topics. So today inshallah ta'ala we'll be starting to discuss or read through one of the books. Hopefully we can complete, but to read, so we can get us read of the books, one of the books or muqtasar that have been written on this topic, which is of the book of contemporary, who is Ibn Al-Uthaymin rahimahullah, who have written a book in Usul al-Fiqh, been translated, and we'll try to go through as a form of reminder to ourselves, and also as a part of to have an understanding and to what is covered in the area of Usul al-Fiqh, and also a need to have knowledge of the science. So with this particular science of Ilm Usul al-Fiqh, that the books that normally cover this science, the books of Usul al-Fiqh, that of the method and the approach that they will have, that first they will discuss concerning Tariq Ilm Usul al-Fiqh, regarding give us an history of how this science was developed through from the start of from the time of the Prophet ﷺ up until contemporary times, or up until the main books of fiqh. Also with Usul al-Fiqh, they will discuss concerning of those important books that relates to fiqh. So and also the manahij of the ulama in studying of Usul al-Fiqh. So you'll find concerning that with Usul al-Fiqh, it has primary books. Some of those books are the books that are said in the books of more larger size books that are considered to be the main books, and also you'll find books that are said to be the more muqtasarat. And each madhahib will have their own set of books. So the Hanafi have their own set of books, till even that the method that is used in studying, or the methods in studying of fiqh, they said is two madrasatan, that they have two madrasa. The way of the Hanafiya, which the way of the Hanafiya is to their rules and principle, it is based from the aqwal of the A'imma. So the Hanafi, their approach is look to the aqwal of the A'imma of the Hanafiya, and they'll make rules, they'll take the rules from this. Then you have the way of the Jumhur of the ulama. They call Jumhur, which is the way of the Shafi'iyya, Malikiyya, and the Hanabila. They're called Jumhur, or al-mutakallimun regarding Al-Usul al-Fiqh, or al-Shafi'iyya. So they call those different terms as they're very similar in their approach. So as for, we mentioned that many books in Usul al-Fiqh, those which is Muqtasarat, of the more famous of these books that are said to be the Muqtasarat in Usul al-Fiqh that is studied today, you have each madhab of their books. So the intention is not to cover everything in each madhab. So you have each madhab will have a system and approach regarding where the person would start and then where the person would then develop from there. So you have the books that are the beginner's book, of those books that are said to be beginner's book, that we have this one being of Ibn Uthaymin, of contemporaries. Also we have the more famous one, which is Waraqat by Juhayni. So Al-Waraqat by Juhayni, and also his book which is called Al-Burhan, also is served as one of the main books in Usul al-Fiqh. So inshallah ta'ala, today we'll start discussing what is mentioned here. So we'll go straight into, so before we start, that Ibn Uthaymin, of the thing that ulama also discussed in the Muqaddimah, so I have a Muqaddimah in introduction to Ilm al-Usul al-Fiqh, who is the first that will discuss what is Usul al-Fiqh, what are some of the early works, who the person who first authored a book in Usul al-Fiqh that have reached us, who's Imam al-Shafi rahimahullah. So Imam Shafi, that he wrote a book called Al-Risala, that is in print, even translated. So that's one of the earliest books that have reached us in Usul al-Fiqh. I would say because of many books have been written in Usul al-Fiqh, even today you find books that are books of the old that are now available in print today. So Imam Shafi rahimahullah, of the early ones to have wrote in Usul al-Fiqh, then it kind of somewhat developed from there. So you have many books. You have Juwayni, Burhan, Waraqat. Also we have Ghazali, Mustasfa. Also Al-Razi, Mahsul, Al-Amidi in his book Ahkam. So these are the books in Usul al-Fiqh. Most of those names that I mentioned, that they say ulama mutakallimun. So ulama who are, in most part, they are Asha'ira. And mutakallimun. And sometimes in those books of Al-Jumhur, that they kind of summarize a lot of it as nadari, thing which is just theories, but sometimes they do not apply to the reality in applying fiqh. So some of these principles that they sometimes have laid down is not something that can be applied. Because we said they are known as mutakallimun, some of those things is based upon philosophy. So you find that of the problem with usul, or of those things, is that at some point the philosophy, ilm al-kalam, was introduced into all the science, including usul al-fiqh. And more so, apparent in usul al-fiqh, it was there and affected usul al-fiqh regarding how it is looked upon and became very difficult. So that many of the ulama, both said that the ulama have given attention to this science. A person who studies fiqh, and for a person to be well grounded in fiqh and to teach your fiqh, he must have had studied usul al-fiqh. If he haven't studied usul al-fiqh, then that person will have a lot of shortcomings regarding teaching of fiqh. So to teach fiqh, the person must have with them usul al-fiqh. So I said of those people who have, so the Shaykh, like for example, Shaykh al-Shitri, that in his Mudhakkira, he mentioned quickly regarding concerning certain things that I mentioned concerning Mabadi al-Ashar, which are these like 10 things that are normal, 10 introductory points that I mentioned regarding any science, or some of the science, where they give the ta'rif, which is al-had, al-mawdu', what's the mawdu' of usul al-fiqh, that a person has to understand what's the mawdu' of this particular science. Which is adillati shar'iyya ijmaliyya. So regarding usul al-fiqh is for a person to understand what are the source of evidence, and also how to certain rules regarding how to extract rulings, but in a general way. Fiqh is specific. Usul al-fiqh is general principles that are followed. They know what is wajib. And I may give an example. But then many things, so you have one general principle regarding defining what is wajib. Anything that fall under that category is said to be wajib, because it fulfills the criteria of wujub. So they give maybe one example, but this example can apply to many other cases. But it does give you the rules, the general rules to follow. So usul al-fiqh, it normally break down into one, that matter that relates to the muqaddimah, that we are somewhat mentioning. Then they go into second, what is masadir tashri'. What are the evidence, or what can be said to be valid sources of evidence. Then you have it fall into two categories to be discussed. Then also discuss concerning ahkam shar'iyyah. What are the different rulings that can be passed on a thing, an action? That is something to say something is wajib, something is mustahab, and the likes. Then also gone concerning qawaid istinbat, which goes into the language and also other general principles regarding how to use these texts, the Quran, the Sunnah, to derive rulings in specific cases, using these general rules. Then also the next thing usul al-fiqh is identifying matter relating to al-ijtihad. Who's said to be the thing that relates to ijtihad? Who's a mujtahid? Which we said a mufti. What's his criteria? What's his condition? What is his adab? The person asking a question, what is the mannerism the person should ask a mufti? The muqallid, who is said to be a muqallid, and how he falls into the spectrum of following a madhab. So all these things are discussed in usul al-fiqh. And also, importantly, they will discuss qawahid at-tarjih wa ta'arud. When you find things that seems to be conflicting, how do we now harmonize between those seemingly conflicting texts? So these are the things that are discussed in usul al-fiqh. So I said it is important for the talib, especially concerning that to learn usul al-fiqh. It helps even in all ayahs, it learns. It helps in different sciences, but it is mainly used regarding ahkam al-fiqhiyya in studying of usul al-fiqh. So we start inshaAllah from what has been mentioned by Ibn Uthaymin rahimahullah ta'ala. So this book is like a muqtasara, used for like think was used for like intermediate school or secondary school. It was used for written for that purpose. And few have explained this book. You find several who have explained the book, including, I think, the author himself, explained the book. تفضل.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده. قد قال المؤلف رحمه الله. All praise is due to Allah. We praise Him, seek His help and forgiveness. We repent to Him. We seek refuge with Allah from the evils of our souls and the evils of our actions. Whosoever Allah guides, none can misguide, and whoever He misguides, none can guide. I bear witness that there is no true God but Allah alone, with no partner, and I bear witness that Muhammad is His slave and messenger. Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Peace and blessings upon Him, His family, His companions, and those who follow them until the day of judgment. To proceed, this is a brief treatise in the principles of jurisprudence I have written.
Let's go straight into usul al-fiqh. That's my introduction.
No.
How many pages?
Sentence, 2 sentences.
Okay, 2 sentences. Okay.
To proceed, this is a brief treatise in the principles of jurisprudence that I have written in accordance to the prescribed curriculum for the 3rd year of high school in the Institutes of Islamic Knowledge, and I have called it the Foundations of the Knowledge of Usul. I ask Allah to make our actions purely for Allah and beneficial to the slaves of Allah. He is ever close to respond.
So a point said that this is written, said, for a 3rd year, for what, high school? Ace said this is like a beginner's text. So sure, this is a beginner's text. And I said, so a person regarding studying of fiqh, so we have different levels. A person who has studied this book is actually said, then he has started his path, his journey regarding al-ilm. He's in the beginner stage. So I said, now the unfortunate thing in many cases that a person may have gone through a portion of this book, even this entire book, and he become Shaykh al-Islam. He become a faqih in the West. We said ordinarily, this is for beginners. That doesn't make a person a faqih by studying this book and start to pass his own judgment. Aywa.
Usul al-fiqh. The definition of usul al-fiqh is understood in 2 ways. Firstly, with regards to the first component, usul, and the second, fiqh. Usul is the plural of the word asl, and it means whatever can have something else built upon it. From that we have the asl, i.e. the foundation of a wall, which is in essence its base. Likewise, the foundation of a tree, which has many branches sprouting from it. As Allah the Most High says, Alif Lam Mim, ترى كيف ضرب الله مثلا كلمة طيبة كشجرة طيبة أصلها ثابت وفرعها في السماء. Have you not considered how Allah presents an example, making a good word like a good tree, whose root is firmly fixed and its branch is high in the sky? Fiqh linguistically means understanding, as is in the case in the statement of Allah the Most High, وَحْلُلْ عُقْدَةً مِّن لِسَانِي يَفْقَهُ قَوْلِي, and untie the knot from my tongue so that they may understand my speech. And its use in the science of jurisprudence is knowledge of the rulings of the Shar'iyyah along with their specific evidences. The meaning of the word ma'rifah is knowledge and conjecture, because rulings of fiqh can be perceived with certainty or speculation, as is in the case in many issues of fiqh. The meaning of the words legal rulings, al-ahkam al-shar'iyyah, is rulings derived from the legislation, such as the obligatory or prohibitive nature of something. So from this is excluded rulings based on intellect, such as the knowledge that the whole of something is always bigger than any individual part. Also general rulings like rain falling during a clear wintry night. The meaning of the word process, al-amaliyah, is whatever is not connected to beliefs such as the prayer and zakat. So from this we can exclude all those things which are connected with beliefs, such as tawheed and knowing the names and attributes of Allah. So none of these things are called fiqh in jurisprudence. The meaning of the words specific evidences, al-adillatul tafsiliyah, is evidences of fiqh that are coupled with detailed matters of fiqh. So from this definition we can exclude Al-Usul al-Fiqh itself, because its scope is limited to the general evidences of fiqh. Secondly, with regards to it being a label for this particular science, then it is defined as a knowledge where the evidences of fiqh are determined in general and how they are to be benefited from and the condition of the beneficiary. The meaning of the word generality, al-ijmaliyah, is general rules, such as the saying, commanding indicates obligation, i.e. a command indicates obligation, and forbidding indicates prohibition. And good health requires that whatever has to be implemented. So from this definition, we can exclude specific evidences, as they are not mentioned in Usul al-Fiqh except by way of giving an example for the rule. The meaning of the words and how to make full use of them, وَكَيْفِيَّةُ الْإِسْتِفَادَ مِنْهَا, is knowledge of how to allow the rulings to make full use of the evidences by studying the words and their implications, distinguishing the general from the specific, the restricted from the unrestricted, and the abrogated from the abrogating, and other than that. So by virtue of his insight, the faqih can benefit from the evidences of fiqh and the rulings. The meaning of the words condition of the beneficiary, hal al-mustafid, if the beneficiary is a mujtahid, then he is named as such due to his benefiting from the evidences because he has reached the level of a mujtahid. So knowledge of the mujtahid and the conditions of ijtihad and its rulings return to usul al-fiqh.
Like the word like al-mujtahid, that is not per se used as much today. Now in the books of usul al-fiqh that they refer to the person that will be a mujtahid, that person who is properly qualified to give fatwa. But today that word is not used as much. That today use faqih and the likes. They use the word al-faqih and the likes, or al-mufti. But not everyone who's a mufti have reached the level of a mujtahid. Not everyone who's said to be a mufti have reached the level of a mujtahid. Aywa.
The benefits of jurisprudence. Usul al-Fiqh is a noble science of the utmost importance, immensely rewarding, by which one is able to obtain a capacity to extract legal rulings from evidences on a sound footing. The first person to make this
is... So that's the purpose of the benefit of Usul al-Fiqh, that a person have principles and guidelines that are somewhat set, that he use to extract rulings. So those, so he has set rules. So you have a structure in which how to extract ruling and how to look at the text and how to understand the text in a particular way based upon those guidelines that are being followed. And those rules are usually said, they're set rules. So the person is not somewhat, things are being changed as he goes along, but he knows the rules that are in place and he follows through on them. Then that's the benefit of this to the person, that he's able to have those rules in place that he's following, and those rules are applied so as the person is able can come to a conclusion on a matter. So that's the benefit of Usul al-Fiqh. Of Usul al-Fiqh, as we said, as go along, that the benefit also, as mentioned by that one with Usul al-Fiqh, that the person have now the skill and the training that he's able can extract rulings if he reach that level, but at least the person understand the terminology used by the ulama in books of fiqh. So he's able now can read the books of fiqh and understand the terminology they are used and how they apply these rules in different situations. So the person has the understanding how to read these books correctly and understand them correctly based upon the people of that science. With Usul al-Fiqh, that so that's of those benefits that are mentioned. Shitri and others have mentioned regarding other of those benefits that relating to the person with this Usul al-Fiqh at the end is able to identify who are those people who are said to be people who are specialists in this field. He's able to identify who are those people who are said to be incorrect, use a word like a proper faqih, than a person who's pretending to be a faqih. Clear? So you can identify the ulama who are specialists in this field. And also at time with Usul al-Fiqh, and a person that he knows those ulama, that they are different maratib, and put them in their proper place. Not to overly praise people and give them titles they are not deserving. This person a faqih. This person, the greatest usuli. When there's many others who may supersede that person, above that person. Now, so that help us assist that person identify who are those people who fulfill certain criteria of saying that they are a proper faqih, or close to what they said, a mujtahid. Aywa.
The first person to make this an independent science was Imam al-Shafi'i, Muhammad ibn Idris. Then many other scholars followed him in that and authored many books.
As for the person I said who start the science of towards a discussion between the ulama on this matter, but the first of those books to have reached us is the book of Risala. It's the first of those books regarding Al-Usul al-Fiqh that I've read is the book of Imam Shaykh rahimahullah. The book is many various prints of the book, and also it have been translated into English. Aywa.
Then many other scholars followed him in that and authored many books, which ranged from prose, poetry, and brief and long volumes, until it became an entity in its own right with discernible features.
I was mentioning that added to that every of the four madhahib, or the five madhahib that are Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi, Hanabila, and Zahiriya have their own series of books in Usul al-Fiqh. So the Maliki have their own set of books in Maliki Usul al-Fiqh. The Shafi, the same thing. The Hanafi, the same thing. The Hanabila, the same thing. So they have their own set of books in the science of Usul al-Fiqh. So the person who's Hanbali, he'll have his own set of books that he will be taught. The person Shafi have his own set of books, so the principles as to how the ulama of the Shafi'iyya approach Usul al-Fiqh and the fiqh. Because they have their own set of books. From beginning to the person who said to be a specialist. Aywa.
Rulings, al-ahkam. Al-ahkam, rulings, is the plural of hukm, and linguistically means a judgment, which has been necessitated by the speech of the legislator relating to the actions those burdened with carrying out the obligations of the legislation. Al-mukallifin are mandated, either by request or choice or state. The intent behind our saying the speech of the legislator is the Quran and the Sunnah. The meaning of our words relating to the actions of those burdened with carrying out the obligations of the legislation is what is connected to actions, whether in word or deed, to do something or leave it. So this excludes whatever is associated with belief, so it is not called a ruling with regards to this terminology. The meaning of our statement, al-mukallifin, is whoever is included by the process of being burdened to fulfill the obligations of the legislation. which includes the young and the insane, which excludes the young and the insane. The meaning of our statement, mandated, talab, is commands and prohibitions, whether it be by way of obligation or preference. The meaning of our word choice, takhyir, is in whatever is permissible, and what is meant by our word state, al-wada', is what is correct or otherwise as dictated by the legislator through signs or descriptions which are to be implemented or cancelled. The types of ruling in the Sharia, the types of
It
commands.
discussed regarding concerning these ahkam al-shari'ah, regarding concerning al-shari', who's the one who legislate, who is the legislator. So we know that the first legislator, only the legislator is whom? Allah. Allah sponsors the legislator. That the Prophet ﷺ legislates. He's a lawgiver. He's a legislator.
Yes. No, that's it.
It's the Prophet ﷺ muballigh anillah. The Prophet ﷺ that he conveyed the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He doesn't say come out with his own personal independent legislations. So whatever he legislates from the Prophet ﷺ is by way of wahi, which will either be Quran or al-wahi as-sunnah. But this goes back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet ﷺ muballigh anillah subhanahu wa ta'ala ahkam al-shari'ah. Aywa. So you mentioned regarding concerning these ahkam that either concerning iqtidab, which is either a talab, either things to be done or not to be done. So regarding concerning Islamic law and rulings, that they will fall in the category of things to be done, talab, things act to be carried out, or things that we should avoid. That's one set of the rules. Or of the rules that may fall into takhir, that a person have a choice. You can either carry out that act or you can not do the act, or the person is not blameworthy for not doing it. Or they mention regarding concern al-wad, which is go back to al-wad regarding concern that other signs indicating that thing to be carried out, and these things to be clarified more in details inshallah ta'ala. Aywa.
The types of rulings in the Sharia, the types
So
of
ahkam al-shari'ah that now discuss concerning ahkam al-shari'ah, that qismain, there's have two types, as they mentioned, taklifiyya wa wad'iyya. So ahkam al-shari'ah is of two types. As the author can somewhat clarify, taklifiyya, that goes back to things carried out by the servant. That so he mentioned taklifiyya, and the other will be wad'iyya. Then he'll clarify al-taklifiyya first. Aywa.
the types of commands in the Sharia fall into two categories, taklifiyya and wad'iyya. The taklifiyya are five: wajib, obligation; mandub, encouraged to undertake; muharram, prohibited; makruh, disliked; and mubah, permissible.
So the authors, these mentioned concerning these ahkam al-taklifiyya ijmalan. So give like a general idea of to what they are, and they fall into five that everyone should know. Again, what are they? Wajib, and we'll go through what is wajib. So I understand when the person says this is wajib. What does this mean when a person says that is wajib? The person, is to come, to come. So the mind says up when a person said this act is wajib upon you. What does the person actually mean? Or you say to a person that is wajib. What are you telling that person? So to understand the terminologies in the Sharia as to these words have meaning. So we have to understand these words for what out there to be used in the Sharia, so we use them correctly and not incorrectly. And also when we receive those commands, we understand what is being said to us. The Shaykh asked the Shaykh a question and said, that's wajib for you to do. What does he mean? Basically, so understanding these terms and what comes with it. So you have five of them. You mentioned five. What are they? First one, wajib, to be discussed. Another, mandub. Third, makruh. Okay. And what makruh? Then we have muharram, haram, and the fifth, mubah. Not per se the order, but that's the general five. That's the general five, and to be discussed. So these concern ahkam being passed on something, it usually revolves around one of these four things. One of these five ahkam. So we have to understand what is meant by these terms. أيوة الواجب.
Al-wajib linguistically means what has fallen or what is compulsory. Technically, it means what the legislator has ordered as a matter of obligation, like the 5 daily prayers. So, excluded from our statement, what the legislator has ordered is what is forbidden, disliked and permissible. And also excluded from the statement, by way of obligation, is that which is only encouraged, i.e. mandub. Therefore, something wajib is that which, if carried out, will bring reward for the one carrying it out, and the one that fails to do so deserves to be punished. It is also called al-fard, farida, hatam, and lazim.
So that's concerning al-wajib. So the author, rahimahullah ta'ala, that he defined what is wajib. So again, what they say is wajib.
Linguistically, what is fallen.
In shar'an.
Shar'an, what the legislator has ordered as a matter of obligation.
أيوة. So that's concerning wajib. ما طلب الشارع على وجه الإلزام. So something that the shara, the legislator, have requested to be done, instructed to be done, and by way of compulsion. So we've been instructed to do something, not just a general, but you have to do it. It's a must to do it, compulsion. Now, so that is wajib. So something being, you are being instructed, commanded to do something by way of compulsion. Now, if the person doeth that act, then he has fulfilled what is wajib upon him, or what is required from him. If he does not do it, then the person is deserving, as I said, yastahaq al-adhab, or uquba, is deserving of a form of punishment. Now, and so that's concerning al-wajib. So wajib, as the author here said, so if it is done, you're rewarded. If you leave it, then you're open to be punished for not doing that thing. Also, wajib, you have different definition that becomes, with a person have done it, then he's doing something which is praised for what he's doing. And he's not blameworthy because he has fulfilled what is expected from him. That's al-wajib. Aywa.
Al-mandub.
So the second, mandub. So that's wajib, then mandub. And wajib have different aqsam of wajib, thing being wajib. And also he mentioned another point regarding wajib. It have also other names that it is referred to as. So we have wajib, the common one, or more renowned. The other he mentioned is what? Fard. So we have amongst the Hanabila and the Fard amongst the Hanabila, some of the Hanabila, and also the Ahnaf, they distinguish between both Fard wal Wajib. So said predominant, which is more common amongst the Hanafiya, that they distinguish between Wajib and Fard. So Fard, with them, those who make that distinction, so said the author mentioned, most does not make a distinction. It just, those words are changeable, interchangeable. Wajib, you might say wajib, you might say fard, you might say lazim. All those are interchangeable, synonyms. Then you have those who say no, they actually have wajib and fard have different meaning. We see them as different. What's the difference? So fard is of a higher degree than wajib. Fard is of a what? Higher degree than wajib. How do they make that distinction? They say a fard is by way of something which is qat'iyya. Fard is something like qat'iyya. We're going to discuss about qat'iyya. So if they have, we said qat'iyya, for example, something which is explicit in the Quran. We have a Quranic text to say you must do that thing. Or you have a hadith al-mutawatir. Those are qat'iyya. Nam. As for the next one, which is what? Wajib with a less degree. Compulsory to be done, but not as to the rank of fard. So wajib with them is that the dalil, it is dhanni, speculative, relative. So meaning for them, it is either you have a hadith al-ahad. A hadith al-ahad. So that's how they make those distinction. That's with them. That's with those, both said majority of the ulama, they, of the Hanabila, the Shafi'iyya, and the Malikiyya, do not make a distinction in most part regarding Fard wal wajib, the Ahnaf and some of the Hanabila, Al-Riwayat and Ahmed, that make a distinction. Aywa. Usul fiqh sometimes a bit difficult. Is it?
No.
Okay. And I mentioned regarding yastahaq al-uquba, you find that some of those who mention that yuthab ala fi'li wa ya'aqib ala tarki. So sometimes give a definition of that meaning, that the person fulfill a wajib, yuthab ala fi'li, that he will be rewarded for doing the act, wa ya'aqib ala tarki, and also he'll be punished for not doing that thing. But Ahl Sunnah, in that matter, there's a little issue regarding aqadiyah. There's a little issue regarding that statement. So they can say that, like said, you aqib, as if they're saying definitely you're going to be punished. But the person leaving a wajib, tahta mashiyatillah, still Muslim. Naam. So that's the matter. Sometimes they go into aqadiyah. Naam. We find that of those that you have that Mu'tazila, the Asha'ira, who can somewhat in matter regarding concerning Murtakib al-Kabira, that person is what? Khawarij, kafir. Naam. So sometimes some of those things, those issues, that you find that in every science of certain things that they overlap. Aqidah wal fiqh, Aqidah wal hadith, sometimes they overlap. Aywa.
Al-Mandub linguistically means something or someone appointed or designated.
And next point, because sometimes we say it a lot. Yes, a person said that person may do something which is wrong. Person do, yadan billah, or the person stole. Or a person lie, your child lie, the pizza, Allah gonna punish you in the hellfire. Who tell you that? That's what I'm saying. Are you clear about that? That a person, this person, for what they did, you understand? So you're very, you have this assured, you understand, that you're very convinced, confident that this person, they say something, this convinced, you're going to be punished for what you did. Sometimes we have to be mindful, you understand, that we are saying things in ways that we shouldn't. Because the person, even though, and his baby a child, you understand, as we'll discuss, is a mukallif. And it could be even an adult who said, yes, he may do a haram, but it doesn't necessarily mean definitely the person that he may be punished in the akhirah. Because it's tata mashiyatillah. Naam. So sometimes we have to be mindful of some of the things that we say. Hey, tafaddal.
Tata mashiyatillah.
Hey. And that is under the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If he wishes, he punishes him, and if he wishes, he doesn't.
Al-Mandub linguistically means something or someone appointed or designated. Technically, it means what the legislator has ordered, but not by way of obligation, and is recommended, such as supererogatory prayers. So, what is excluded from our statement, what the legislator has ordered, is whatever is forbidden, disliked, and permissible. And what is also excluded from our statement, not by way of obligation, is that which is wajib. So when something is mandub, the doer is rewarded for carrying out the action and not punished for leaving it. It is also called sunnah, masnoon, mustahab, and nafl.
So the ulama regarding the next point that he discusses of those ahkam al-shar'iyya, mandub. So in the books of Usul they use the word mandub more, nadab. Nam. So al-mandub, that we might say in our general sense, that act is a sunnah. So in our general, when we speak amongst ourselves, we mean this category of acts. Where's that thing which is, for example, the sunnah after al-dhuhr, after maghrib, those salawat that are, you understand, we say those acts, so the ulama mentioned those things that doing that act is mandub. Now, so the word they use more, it will be mandub, and it define what is mandub. So mandub, as he mentioned, ma'umra bihi ashari', what have been commanded by the legislator, la ala wajh al-ilzam, that something have been instructed to do that thing. You are instructed to do that thing, but not by way of compulsion. That's the difference between the first and the second. Wajib wal mandub. You're wajib, you're commanded, instructed to do that thing by way of compulsion. Mandub you're commanded to do that thing, but by way of, not by way of compulsion. Clear? So you're recommend, so it is like we say, you're recommended, either recommend for the person to do, that you either encourage for it to be done. So that's concerned the difference between wajib and mandub. So both are command to be done. Both are instructed to be done. But one by way of ilzam, yes, you must do it, it's compulsory, and the other min ghayr ilzam, where you're not per se you're not compelled to do this. You're not compelled to do this. So dhuhr, wajib. Sunan after dhuhr, 2 rak'ah after dhuhr, is not what it is, mandub. It is mandub, where the person doing something which is recommended to do that thing. If it is done, he is rewarded, and if he does not do it, then he's not threatened with punishment. So if he does it, there's no, use the word, there's no harm on him, unless it becomes something which he does tikraran. He starts to leave those things, constantly becomes something which is blameworthy, that he's looked down upon for this. Not that he's per se sinful, but may be looked down upon. Clear? So a person gives something with a sunnah, either recommended sunnah, for example, Ramadan Salat Tarawih. The person didn't pray one. Then in that case, the person may be looked down upon. He's like shunned. But we can't say that he's sinful, but he's shunned. Because he's not doing something which is either recommended. He missed everything of Ramadan, of Salatul Tarawih, without a valid reason. Then that will consider the person, then he may be looked down upon. Aywa.
Al-Muharram linguistically means forbidden, and technically it means what was forbidden by the legislator as an obligation to avoid it, such as disobedience to parents. So what is excluded from our statement, forbidden by the legislator, is wajib, mandub, and mubah, permissible. And what is also excluded from our statement, an obligation to avoid, is that which is disliked. So when something is muharram, forbidden, it means the one who leaves it is rewarded, and the one who commits it deserves to be punished. It is also known as mahdhur or mamnu'.
It's the definition of muharram, which would be the third of those ahkam shar'iyya, which is muharram, that saying something is haram, the person that now the person as with haram, that have done something that he should not. You have done as he mentioned, manahu anhu ashara, something that been made forbidden by the legislator, ala wajh ilzam, by way of it's compulsory for you not to do that thing. So thing which is said to be strictly forbidden, and he mentioned the person fall into stealing, then he's doing something which is haram. So the person have done what he was forbidden to do, then the person will fall into haram, where he should have leave that thing completely. Aywa.
Al-makruh linguistically means something hated, and technically it means what was forbidden by the legislator, not by way of it being obligated to abandon, such as taking and giving with the left hand. So what is excluded from our statement, forbidden by the legislator, is wajib, mandub, and mubah. And what is also excluded from our statement, not by way of obligation, is that which is muharram, forbidden. And when something is makruh, then the one who leaves it out of compliance of the legislation is rewarded, but the one who does the action is not punished.
That's then makruh. Then he mentioned regarding concerning that mahdhur wa mamnu', that also these are terms that are used as indicating something is haram. Then he discussed concerning the next after this, makruh, that he discussed manahu anhu ashara la ala wajh al-ilzam. So something the person of bitark, that a person have been requested to leave away something or instructed to leave away something, but not by way of ilzam, not by way of ilzam. Aywa.
Al-mubah linguistically means something declared or permitted to do, And technically it means what is not connected with a command or not something prohibited in and of itself, like eating during the nights of Ramadan. So what is excluded from our statement, what is not connected with a command, is that which is wajib and mandoob, recommended. And what is also excluded from our statement, not something prohibited, is whatever is muharram, i.e. forbidden, and makruh, i.e. disliked. And what is not included by the saying in and of itself is anything which is connected to a command, therefore being a medium, which would then itself be commanded, or something forbidden would also act as a medium to something that which would also be forbidden, and that would not take it out of the original state of mubah. And something is mubah as long as the description is one of permissibility, then it will not result in reward or punishment. And it is also called halal and jaiz.
Understand? As Al-Uthaymin mentioned regarding that these are the 5 ahkam al-shar'iyyah, at-taklifiyya, wajib, what are the other one? Mandoob, muharram, makruh, and mubah. So these are the 5 ahkam al-taklifiyya that the Shaykh he mentioned them and clarifies to what is meant by it. Says that all Muslims should understand what is meant by these 5 terms. All Muslims should have a general idea as to what is meant by these 5 terms as we use them regularly. So we should know what is intended by these words. Shar'an as the author a word that says ma amara wa ma nahi ash-shari'. So we're going to say something which is haram, something which is mubah, that goes back to Islam, and that the person that goes back to ash-shari'. It's not based upon my own personal opinion or this personal opinion, that a person as we will discuss should have evidence for these things. This is something is haram, something which is this and that, or otherwise the person should try to ensure that we have some evidence to back up what we're saying, because these are hukum al-shar'i, these are ahkam al-shar'iyyah, not my personal ahkam or this personal personal rulings. That is go back to ash-shar'. Aywa. If we can do the other ones, if we have. I doubt it though.
Rulings of wad'iyah. The rulings of wad'iyah are that which the legislator has placed signs for to prove its validity or absence of, or implementation or cancellation, and from which is valid, sahih or invalid, fasid. As sahih linguistically means something free of disease, and technically it means the effects resulting from an act of worship or a contract. So sahih, valid, acts of worship are acts that fulfill the responsibility by meeting the requirements. And what is sahih, valid regarding contracts, is that the effects of it are directly affected by its existence, such as the relationship between property and the contract of sale, for example. So nothing can be valid until it meets the necessary conditions and is free of any obstacles preventing it from being valid.
So the same for example, as-salah. The person might say the salatu sahiha. The person asks about the salat, he said the salatu sahiha. That the person have done what is still required. The person have done what he have done what is required of him, and hasn't brought anything that will invalidate that salah. So the salat is considered to be sahih. It might have some deficiency. At time may have some deficiency, but it still fulfill the requirements without him doing anything that will completely negate the salah. So it's still sahih. Naam? Aywa.
And what is sahih regarding For example, part of worship is to perform the prayer on time, fulfilling all the conditions, pillars and obligatory steps. And an example of contracts is to have a contract of sale, fulfilling all the known conditions without anything that will stop it being a valid contract. So if one of these conditions is not present, or an impediment is present, it prevents it from being valid. An example of that is the condition of worship, to pray without purification.
So the person pray, and then at the end of the salat, you remember that I didn't make wudu, but he prayed and the salat has ended. Is salat sahih? So salat is not sahih. Because he came with something, even though he went to the salah, prayed the salat as it should be prayed properly, but then he forfeit a condition. That condition is absent will mean that that salat is invalid. Clear? So you might find case that occurs sometimes concerned that of those things to be that the person praying and his clothing is not covering what it should cover. Things are being exposed. It's too short, so his shirt is top, so it's already been exposed. So these are the things that even though he prayed, but his salat may not be valid. So it's not sahih. Aywa or sahiha. Aywa.
An example of that in contrast is the absence of a requirement in the contract, such as selling that which one does not have. An example of the presence of an impediment in worship is to offer supererogatory prayers at a time of prohibition. And an example of the presence of an impediment in contracts is to sell something during Friday prayer after the second call in a way that is not permissible.
So you find that acts of ibadah have shurut and also mawana. So the shurut has to be fulfilled and the mawani have to be removed. And also the same thing with mu'amalat. That also regarding certain type of contracts also have conditions that must be met. And if those conditions are there, if there's things that are present that shouldn't be there, they make the contract invalid. So a woman getting married, she has 5 witnesses. She has 5 witnesses. The husband is there, she's there, the Imam is there, but she has no wali. But she has 5 witnesses, or they have 5 witnesses, and they got married, and there's no wali. Is the marriage valid? Hey, so you have places where people get married. You have these little shops that people get married, and the person is do the nikah, and there's no wali. But everything else is there except for the wali. So, a next case regarding a nikah, that a marriage occurred, and they agree upon a mahar, but it wasn't specify what it is. They agree, he's going to give her a mahar, but it didn't specify what that mahar to be. Is the marriage valid? Allahu Akbar.
It has to be specified.
Yeah, you're asking the question. It has to be known. So is the marriage valid? So the person asks you, I got married. This is the woman that, and he agreed upon a mahar. We have the discussion. He agreed, yes, he gave a mahar, but we didn't agree as to what exactly it is to be. And when the Imam did it, he understand there was a mahar to be given, but he was not told exactly what it is. But he did the nikah. Are we married?
If it's a shart, then no.
Is it valid then?
If it's a shart, then it's not.
Yes. Is it a shart? Then. So the mahar is not a shart. It's not a shart, it's wajib to be done, but if it is not specified, then they decide it's still valid, therefore no, they specify whatever it is later. You with me?
Between themselves or with the...
Between themselves and the wali and the primary people, that he agreed that they got married, but they didn't specify. He agreed that I'm going to give you a mahar, but he didn't say what it is. You understand? The marriage is valid. And he just, okay, what you want, and we agree upon something, and they continue. Khalas. Aywa. That is sahih. Aywa.
Al-fasid linguistically means something that has been lost or is an act of loss, and technically it means the effects that do not result from an act of worship or a contract. Therefore, the fasid, invalid acts of worship are those that do not fulfill the obligation, so that the demand is not met, such as praying before the correct time. And fasid, invalid contracts are those that have no effect, such as selling something unknown. All corrupt acts of worship, contracts and conditions are haram, forbidden, because that is transgressing the limits of Allah and taking His verses as a mockery. Because the Prophet ﷺ forbade stipulating conditions that are not in the Book of Allah. Al-Fasid, invalid, and Batil, false, have the same meaning except in two instances. In Ihram, Fasid is what the person in Ihram treads on while in Ihram before the first constraints of Ihram are lifted. And Batil, falsehood, is if he denounces Islam whilst doing it. In marriage, the second instance, Fasid is whatever the scholars differed in as being corrupt or not, such as marriage without guardian, and Batil is what has been unanimously agreed upon, such as the false nature of marriage of a widow or a divorced woman in a waiting period.
So regarding fasid, he discussed regarding concerning al-fasid or batil, generally mean the same thing, except in two cases. Then he mentioned those examples. So the main thing to understand, what is al-fasid, where the act is not said to be, it's an invalid act. So the act, even though maybe been carried out, it hasn't been done. So even though it's been carried out, in reality, it hasn't been done. That's al-fasid, wal-batil. What comes next? Knowledge. Okay. Because you have other shurut that they mentioned regarding concerning that min ahkam al-adiyya, what is ashart wa sabab al-mana. Those are the things I'm not sure if it's to come. Or maybe you missed those, because my book is... Okay. We're going to call what after ilm? What comes after ilm? Okay, we'll skip kalam. That is more linguistic stuff, I think. Hey, we'll finish with ilm.
Knowledge. The definition of knowledge is the perception of something for what it really is and being firmly aware of it, such as knowing that the whole is greater than the part and that the intention is a requirement for worship to be accepted. So what is excluded from our words, the perception of something, is the lack of the complete awareness of something, which is called jahl basit, plain ignorance, such as someone being asked, when was the Battle of Badr? And he replies, I do not know. And what is also excluded from our words of what it really is to perceive something different from what it really is. This is called jahl murakkab, compounded ignorance, such as someone being asked, when was the Battle of Badr? To which he replies, in the 3rd year after migration, when in actuality it was during the 2nd year after the migration. And what is also excluded from our words, firmly aware of it, is the perception of something in a non-assertive way. So it is likely to be different from the way it was perceived. Then that is not called knowledge. Then if he prefers one over the possibility, then if he prefers one over the other possibility, then it is referred to as dhann, and the other possibility as wahm. And if both are thought to be the same, then it is called shak, doubt. And this shows that the perception of things are attached to the following: knowledge, the perception of something for what it really is, and being firmly aware of it; plain ignorance, a lack of awareness in the totality of something; compounded ignorance, a perception of something in contravention to what it really is; dhann, a perception of something which the prospect of it being against a less correct view; a dhann, a perception of something with the prospect of it being against a less correct view; wahm, a perception of something with the possibility of it being against the most correct view; shak, a perception of something with the possibility of it having something equally correct opposing it. Categories of knowledge. Knowledge is divided into two parts, the essential and the theoretical. Essential knowledge is that the thing known is essential, whereby a person can't help but know it without the need to look for it or try to extrapolate it, such as the knowledge that the whole is greater than the part, and that fire is hot, and that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. Theoretical knowledge is what needs to be considered and looked into, such as knowledge that the intention is necessary in the prayer. Yeah.
That's it? Okay, we'll start this short. I've said that for example, Shaykh Salih Shitri announced in the books of Usul regarding ahkam al-wad'iyya, of the things that they will clarify and mention that they have illah. So they have like illah as ahkam al-wad'iyya, They'll have a second, a sabab. I'll define what is sabab, an example. They'll discuss a shart. What is a shart? Which is something is, in English, a prerequisite. What is meant by this? Also, al-mani', what is said to be a mani', those things that an impediment or blocker. Then you have a saha or sahih, when something is said to be a sahih or saha. Again, 6 would be fasad, when something is deemed to be fasid. Azima, what is said to be azima, that then we have a ruqsa. So you have azima and ruqsa, they are opposites. So azima is dhuhr 4 rakah. Nam, so that's azima. Nam a ruqsa, that now ruqsa, dhuhr, when you're traveling is only rakah. Rakah tends, that's a ruqsa. No, it's not a choice. No, it's a ruqsa. It's a concession. Now, so you might find certain cases that a person that is allowed to leave what is the normal act to something as given a type of concession, so that's considered to be a ruqsa. That's a ruqsa. Then you have ada, when something is said that a person have carried through on that thing. Then also we have i'ada, when a person is repeating something, shar'an, and also that qada, when he's making up something. Now, so for example, that Ramadan, Siyam Ramadan, it is said to be ada, qada, which is it? Ada, he's doing Ramadan, he's fasting in the month of Ramadan, that's ada, he's doing it on point. The person missed some days. Now, a person that he broke his fast. Eating that day intentionally. Now, is that what you have to do? Qada or i'ada? Hey, so, hey, freedom. So you have those discussion between the ulama. Nam, well, and a person then who that they said qada, and that a person, for example, in Ramadan, the person have a legitimate reason to break his fast, then make it up later. That is called qada, because they have a legitimate reason. He has a legitimate reason. The person he fast, the person he prayed dhuhr at 12 o'clock when the time comes in at 1 o'clock. With me? So the person, he prayed Salatul Dhuhr at 12 o'clock, but thinking it was, but the time comes in at 1 o'clock. That act, is it, then he has to do what? Repeat the act. Is it qada or i'ada? I'ada. Qada. I'ada. Because he has to repeat the act again, because the act was not done in its right time. Nam, it wasn't done, so that act was not done in its proper time. So yeah, we said that the khilaf between ulama, for example, like Ramadan, that a person will have a valid reason to break his fast, and he has to do it after Ramadan. Is that qada or ada?
So repeat again, sorry.
The person who in Ramadan had a valid reason not to fast, he was ill, or a woman who's on a cycle, a valid reason not to fast. They've been given by the Sharia. They're going to make up now after Ramadan. Is that really qada or ada? Or some see it as ada because they were given reason to pray then, and they couldn't do it then in Ramadan. So in reality, we say refer to it as qada, but some may describe it as ada because they do it in time that they were given, which is after. That's that time. That is the time for it, for that act, and not during Ramadan because of the mana, of the impediments. So that's concerns, but those are things that are sometimes covered. So some of these masail are sometimes you have khilaf in how you apply some of these things. So that everything is straightforward. Straightforward. Now we have some of application. So we have the general principle, but which of these at times you apply to this case, it may vary. One might see it as qada, one might see it as ada, one might see it as i'ada, depending on how they're looking at things. Nam, so that's concerning. That's why you might find a difference between the ulama on some matters. is the application. But the rules and principles are clear, but sometimes some of the fine details in certain matters, it may vary with one alim compared to another. With that, inshallah, we'll end. Wa billahi ta'ala tawfiq.